Hey, this is my first manga log, and I'm just going to go over what I've actually read recently. First, I'll start off with volumes 12 and 13 of Platinum End. I read these two back to back pretty closely. Um, I think this is some of the best that the series has been so far, and mostly because it focuses on the doctor guy here. Um, he seems like he's got this final confrontation pretty much all planned out. And he has pretty much everything tested too. So he has a seemingly foolproof plan. He's pretty much just executing that on this whole. So this volume 12 is kind of the setup to that, and volume 13 is the execution of that, pretty much. And in volume 13, we get kind of a little last bit of character development between the main character Mira and the love interest Saki. Because what happens after this is actually pretty important. I'm not going to spoil the last few pages of this because it's kind of a big deal what happens, but it's basically seeming like he's got everything figured out and has pretty much guaranteed to win. But there was even unknown to the main characters, there was a way that it's not really a Deus Ex Machina, but it's a really smart kind of twist that really helps with selling what happens, and it's a pretty good conclusion so far. I actually went into volume 13 thinking it was the final volume, but no, there's still more to go after this. So I'm kind of, for these two books, I'm kind of happy for what's going on. I would give these are up there with some of the good stuff that you kind of expect from this duo. So I'd say the best part of volume 12, volume 12 mostly focuses on the backstory and motivations for Dr. Yoneda. And I think he's pretty much the series' strongest character so far. He's definitely the villain right now, so you don't quite agree with everything. He don't quite agree with his motivations, but the nihilistic kid and Dr. Ineda, they make a pretty good kind of duo. He kind of just idolizes him and kind of follows him around. I mean, he does have that. Dr. Ineda has shot him with the red arrow, so he's kind of just gonna follow him along anyway. But he wouldn't even need it necessarily. But Dr. Yoneda is I think Kohaba is just better at writing smart characters. And I think having a character like Yoneda in here helps a lot, because then he can use Yoneda's smarts pretty much to, write smartly himself, and I think that's where he's best at it. And I think the artwork really brings him to life too. And kind of the goofy bit between these two volumes is that the cat is out of the bag, and pretty much the whole world knows about this crazy, goofy anime plot that's going on with all these people, these random people who are potentially going to become God. It literally doesn't make any sense, but now the world nations have to figure out what they're going to do about this situation. So it's kind of that weird situation where you have the general public just oh, what's, and then you get the one character. And you get the one random character that is just a random person out in a crowd, and he's like, "Sounds like a hypocrite to me." It's like this random nonsense fucking opinions you hear from strangers. It's basically like Facebook, but you just hear random people dumb opinions about everything that's happening in the story. It's kind of weird. There's a reason most stories that have any kind of fantasy elements, they don't let the whole general public know about weird anime stuff that's happening, because it gets really weird. And this kind of shows that, because you have crowds of people watching the TV, and they all have some kind of dumb opinion they got to say. It's just kind of a weird thing to do, but overall, that's just kind of one of the strike things the series as a whole does. But after 12, 13 volumes, we're kind of used to it. I really think this is a good volume right here. 13 is a good volume. So is 12. All the characters are pretty good at having their plan and what they're going to do, and they're the good guys are kind of winging it because they're funneled into a situation, and it looks like it's not going to go well for them. And Dr. Ineda has pretty much every step of his plan figured out, and it's pretty much going exactly to plan. So if you're the type of person like that, where your anime villain has everything planned out, it's kind of that kind of cliche, but it works well here because Ohaba's writing kind of makes it work here. Next, I read I don't know if this is omnibus, but volume 1 of Planet Test. I read through this whole thing, and it's really good. As a really big fan of Vinland Saga, this has a lot of the same like kind of like thematic storytelling and this kind of character driven drama that Vinland Saga has. And it's not as action packed as Vinland Saga. It's not it's not a medieval storyline with a lot of like war and combat and battles and stuff. But it's just these dudes who live out in space, and you get kind of see a little bit of like their philosophy, how what it takes to be that kind of person, live out in space, or the kind of person that is going to train, super vigorously to go on a 7 year mission out into deep space, and the kind of mentality you got to have to go along to do that kind of thing. It has a lot of same of the thematic storytelling Vinland Saga has, and you have these people going trying to train to go out in deep space, and they prepare to live their whole lives out there, and the guy kind of has to the main character here. He doesn't just have to like train his body to be good at being out in space. He's literally fighting against his own psyche to be able to prepare himself for the kind of isolation that he's willing to dive into. It's the closest thing I could think of is that he's literally like it's this concept of being so alone. You're so far out in space, away from everyone you know and love, that you just have to embrace it. And it gets kind of the point where it's just like you stare into the void and the void stares back. Because once you figure that you want to live that kind of life, that what do you got to do to prepare yourself for that? It gets really thought provoking. So this is, I think, half of the series. I think there's one more book like this, and that's the whole story. So I'm really looking forward to volume 2 of this. And Planetes is just as much of a masterpiece so far as I think Vinland Saga is, and I think Yukimura is pretty much a master at writing this type of story. If you're a big fan of Vinland Saga, you should read this definitely. And if you read Planetes and you like it a lot, you should read Vinland Saga because they're similar stories. I mean, these guys are in space, but they call themselves sailors, and Vikings were also sailors, where they go off and go on their Viking raids for who knows how long, and they're two very dedicated groups of people, I guess, and that's what Yukimura is really good at writing about. And his artwork's really good in this. I like the color pages a lot. That's really nice to have color pages in a book. You don't see that too often. And he's really good at like these really stunningly detailed emotional shots, and at the same time he's really good at expressions and comedic elements. So it's got it's funny, it's thought provoking, it's dramatic, and I'm really excited to read through this whole next volume that I'm going to be able to get soon. So look out for that in my next manga haul. I'm pretty sure I got that in the cart already. I'm just waiting to pull the trigger on that set of new books I'm going to get. The volume 2 of Planetes will definitely be in that. And I wonder if this is some kind of hint of that he was writing. I don't know what the timeline was for this manga artist to be. If he was like, maybe he was just researching stuff about Vikings and he liked Vikings, but if this is like some kind of Easter egg or something, because I know this book came out way earlier, but I don't know the timeline for when he was doing the art for everything and when he was actually publishing stuff. So I had to look into that. But it's a pretty good coincidence, I think, because you have your space dude wearing a Vikings jersey, and the two big things that this artist has made is about space and Vikings. So it's a little bit more than a coincidence, if you have to ask me. It seems like it's a pretty cool detail. The story is about these guys. It's almost like similar to Cowboy Bebop, because you have these guys, this crew. They hang out on a ship most of the time, and they go places. They usually like go to the moon or something like that, and they hang out at the moon stations there, the cities there. But they kind of just work together to, chain smoking is like literally a storyline in this, just like something like in Cowboy Bebop would be. It's kind of just ridiculous. The characters have their own different ways of like dealing with problems or something of that nature, and we have this. She's basically a pacifist. She's a lover. She doesn't like to fight. She really sees like the emotional things of like she's every time the main characters are being kind of jaded or like willing to throw everything away for their space dreams, she's always like, who are you going to come back to? What about the people that love you and stuff like that? She's always like trying to bring these people back, literally back down to earth. I think I kind of just realized that, but that's like literally her thing. Is that these dudes, the kid and the dad, they want to live similar lives. They want to go off in space, and it's pretty much her job to literally bring them back down to earth and tell them to stop being so crazy all the time. And they're literally in a firefight right now, and someone threw a grenade at them. And she says, "You can't throw the grenade back because you'll kill the bad guys. You can't do that." And she, it's this kind of she's completely a complete foil to the other characters to the nth degree. So it's really, so they do a really good job at writing characters in this and giving you like some character drama. And what are these guys willing to do to fulfill their dreams? And it's space jockeys like this guy, terrorists like this guy who want to stop them from ruining space. This guy has his dream, this guy has his ambitions. What are they going to do when they go up against each other? Are they going to stop each other? Are they going to are they going to kill each other? Are they what's going to happen? And that's pretty much the human story of Planet Tess. It's really interesting. It's pretty much it's a must read, really. It's up there with, I mean, as far as if this is only 2 volumes long, this is going to be an excellent, basically like a short story for a manga. It's really great. You should read it. And it's not any longer than it needs to be. This was a pretty good read. Like it was a good little chunk of book to get through. And if there's another one of these to read and it ends well, then I mean you can't ask for more. It's perfect. So hopefully I want to see the next volume. I'm willing to get to it. Now, obviously, if you read if you saw my other manga haul books, I've already read these. But what I have read, I just have these here for reference because I've been reading this series online, and I've gone from like volume 3 or 4 to I'm read about to volume 12 or so, and so I'm getting close to the end, and I kind of like it because it seems like we're finally going to get out of the episodic kind of storytelling, the slice of life style stuff, and get back into the drama that maybe the first 2 volumes were more about, the progressing storyline. But I really do like the story a lot. I could take or leave the slice of life bits of it, where it's just here's a chapter and a thing they do that day or whatever, yada yada. I really prefer the storylines with Kaoru and Miss Aoi-chan. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm kind of happy though. I am reading it online because I can't find the final volumes of this out there. Like you can buy these used out there pretty cheaply, like as much as any other manga that's about this old. But I see like volume 17 go for like $40. Like that's ridiculous. It must have only been printed once, or who knows how many times, how many books are actually floating around out there. Maybe it has a really good ending, that's why it's so sought after, but it's the middle of the story is kind of troublesome for me for multiple reasons, because the story itself is no longer a fascinating drama about these characters suddenly getting to live together. It's about a bunch of other characters and just stuff they do, and it just kind of it kind of just turns into a harem, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it slows down. Its episodic nature kind of slows down the whole story pretty drastically. And it seems like where the anime leaves off, if you watch the anime, has about 40 episodes in total. It leaves off at about where I'm at in the manga, and that's when the story apparently gets good again. So if you've only ever watched the anime or something, maybe pick up the manga and finish it, because apparently that's the point where the story gets serious again. Another thing is that the art style changes quite drastically. It seems like it's returning back to a more stretched out, mature looking character designs instead of squashed kind of younger looking characters, because here we see these characters, we got really defined features, we got slightly larger ears, noses, these kind of features, and I'll try bringing it up. We have much mature older looking characters, and I'll show you how like those character designs change drastically by this is volume 1, so let's see volume 2 once. Go to the end of volume 2, see if I can show you. Everyone in general has more of a 90s look to them in these first 2 volumes, and it must have been that time in the late 90s where either the tech was changing or the style in manga in general was changing. But it also might be some kind of demographic thing where the rounder shape on the face, and it's just, and that with all the other characters too. But but I want to see where the series goes. I want to see how it ends. I'll probably report on how the whole series ends next time. But so far, it's a really good book. It's a really good series. I like it a lot. It's something good to read. Just kind of here, like a few chapters a day. And, it's one Google search away, and you can jump back in the chapter you had previously. And it's something you can read really easily. So I'd probably recommend that, or watch the anime, then pick up where the anime left off. I don't know where you can even find the manga, because I can't find volumes 14 and up anywhere, so we have to see what happens. And when I do finish the series, I'll go a little bit more in depth, maybe give kind of a little, like a half review, just kind of my thoughts and stuff, nothing scripted, just kind of babble on like this. And finally, the thing I read last week or two is I read the entirety of Junji Ito's Uzumaki. I told about this in a couple manga halls ago when I got this. I just flipped through a few pages, got kind of the first couple chapters in there, and my first impressions on stuff. And this is just a flat out fever dream of a horror spectacle, in my opinion. I'm not really into horror movies, but I really like horror novels. Psychological stuff in my novels that I read, because I don't get freaked out by it. Movies kind of hijack my brain. I don't really like jump scares and shit like that, but I do enjoy me some creepy stories. And this is a awesome collection of creepy stories, all about this town that is being infested by these spirals and the weird phenomena that happen around that. And pretty much just slowly over the course of the book, it starts off with one or two people being kind of in, the weird phenomenon, like a small little whirlwind like this. A couple people being completely obsessed with the spirals themselves and going crazy and having their bodies distort, and crazy, absolutely crazy, weird shit happen. And then it slowly devolves into pretty much infecting the entire town and everyone in it, to the point of the town is no longer recognizable. It's completely in ruins, and people start it's just weird. I don't only know what the allegory here would be for this, but it's just utter devastation and just like psychosis and distortion of reality. And then so basically the structure of this book is that every chapter or so is kind of just I'll get to the chapter list here. Every chapter or so is kind of like a little quick story of maybe one or two people having some kind of weird incident or some kind of phenomenon. And then the final few chapters are kind of this continuating plot of not being able to escape from the town and kind of just trying to survive, and then trying to escape, and the last few sane people are finally just succumbing to the spiral nonsense, and eventually making their way into the center of the spiral and figuring out what exactly is going on here. And it does have kind of a conclusion, but it's kind of a basically it's this story of there's no escaping from this, and it's not necessarily a happy ending. So it's kind of this study into this complete psychosis, and it makes me think of something like kind of eldritch horror, Lovecraftian themes, with maybe a little bit of like just almost like a Lost in Wonderland of just being completely, everything is just being completely flipped on its head, and just crazy shit happening everywhere to everybody. And just it's the main character. She's just trying to. She's the most everything is kind of happening around her, and then at first it's just she kind of notices some weird things happen to people. Doesn't really necessarily, like, at first I didn't even know she was the main character, because these things don't necessarily directly happen to her. But I noticed that she was always at the center of like every one of these plots. She's always like kind of observing what's happening. And and before I know it gets more involved, she becomes more in danger every time. She narrowly escapes a few situations. Like, I thought she was totally toast when the spiral started infecting her herself. Um, so spirals. So anything that you can think of that has a spiral in it eventually kind of gets mentioned here. So everything from snails to the hair, to the inner ear, to the spiral staircase that goes up in the lighthouse. It's all becomes like a conduit for this crazy phenomenon, and it's like a fever dream that you can't escape out of. And this whole book is the art is fantastic here. And I know Junji Ito writes a lot of books, so I think there's going to be, I don't know how this stacks up against the rest of his work, but I'm very excited to read more Junji Ito and see what kind of stuff he comes up with in other stories. And I would like to see kind of the spiral stuff come back later. I think I noticed it was mentioned in other stories, but I'd like to see this theme kind of come back later. See what happens. But yeah, I read this whole thing. It's a really good book. You should definitely read it. Everything here. Let's see. I'm kind of lukewarm on Platinum End. So I mean, if you're a big fan of Death Note, maybe pick it up just to see what those artists have done. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's got its highs and lows. If you like a good, more mature rom-com, Yoshi Ori is pretty good. Especially if you're fine with the episodic slice of life nature to it, and the maybe taking a while to get to its main storyline. Planetes and Uzumaki here are pretty much must reads in my opinion, so I'm really happy I have them now. And I really like that they were larger books, so they took me a couple days each to read because it was a good chunk. So I think I read this in 2 big chunks, and I think I did the same thing here. I read the first bit, and then I read pretty much the whole back of it. But really, these really good books here. Pick them up for sure if you can. If you know of these stories and you're interested, I'd say pick them up too. They're not bad. You just gotta if you read volume 1 of Yoshi Ori and you wanted more of that, you might be disappointed because the rest of the series is pretty vastly different than maybe the first volume or two. You just kind of if I knew that ahead of time and knowing what I was getting into instead of reading through full volumes online and like waiting for the story to progress, I'd at least temper my expectations for it. But other than that, all pretty solid stories here. Stay tuned later. I should have another manga haul coming out soon. And review for Yoshi Ori when I finish it. And I have also finished Love Hina, and I plan to talk about that too soon. So, just keep up with my stuff and see you guys later.